For that, other than the slots that we had to fill, and there's a couple scholarships that we're holding for a couple reasons. Nothing like there's a guy's going to sign this afternoon or something, but we have our targets and we have our guys, and both short term and long term. And there's a couple positions where we need to spread it out. We didn't want to take, for instance, 2 quarterbacks in this class, but we're kind of down a number there technically. Since we had the 2 guys signed, Jeff and Jake did, and try to build a long-term plan.
So you have 2 left over?
Yes, I mean probably. There's always a gray area in that of whether it's guys that end up moving on or whatever happens in the spring. Hopefully everybody will be on track academically and all the other stuff that goes into that, which they are. But there's always some wiggle room.
Now you mentioned the World Tour you guys went on. How important was that in maintaining the class that you guys had worked so hard to cultivate the previous year?
I don't know. It was well received. I think the assistant coaches did such a great job of maintaining the lines of communication. And our approach is just to be very honest with people, and up front of how that goes. And I think more or less it was just a show of solidarity. And when there's a lot of people talking about a lot of things that maybe aren't factual, when there's 8 guys that have been here for the last 4 years that are staying here, that's impactful on a young man or his family. And so that was something that we just wanted to do, and we thought that was a good strategy to just show them.
Left side of the room, Sean Shoppy.
Were there any guys that you guys had targeted that in the end you were disappointed you didn't get? And the flip side is, were there guys that you maybe weren't expecting that sort of came through at the last minute?
I'm not going to answer that. But the biggest part in all of this is you want what you get. Not necessarily you get what you think you hope you thought you tried to. That whole thing is it kind of goes back to being we have an approach with our guys and an approach with our recruits, and we're not going to guarantee them stuff. We're not going to tell them stuff that's not true. We're not going to promise them the moon, and because we have to build trust with those guys, because a year from now when you show up on campus and wait a second, I'm not starting every game, and you guarantee me this and that and that and that and that. Where's the trust? So that guy ends up being disappointed. You end up having a disappointed guy, which is non-productive, and he leaves. And there's just, I don't get that, and also that kind of gets to the kind of guys that we want. The guys that we want them to compete. We want them to compete every single day, whether you're Marcus Mariota or the guy who's not Marcus Mariota. We want them to compete every single day. The neat thing about a bunch of these guys, and I said it yesterday to a couple of our coaches when we were having this conversation about a couple guys like that, is on the one hand, at the same position, there's a guy that's committed that's recruiting guys at his same position. That says a lot about that guy. That's the guy we want, and we got those guys.
Jake Zivit on the right-hand side.
How much convincing did you have to do to recruits with the coaching change? How much concern was brought up to you guys about Chip leaving? And what did you tell the players who brought up that concern about Chip leaving and the coaching change taking over?
It happens, I think I don't know how much concern there was. I don't know how much. People ask different questions, or you hear different, various levels of concern. I don't know to what degree we had to convince. I think again, when 8 of the 10 guys are still here, that's a pretty, resounding something to squelch those concerns, hopefully, and just. That was probably the biggest thing, is just getting out there, getting in front of them, having, in some cases, just meeting and talking. And Oregon football is certainly bigger than me, certainly bigger than any one guy. And this program is what it is for a lot of reasons other than just one person. And guys wanted to be here for a lot of reasons, and I'm sure Chip was one of them. But I know there were a lot of other reasons too.
The left over here, Chris.
Coach Lubick and Coach Aiken were kind of late additions to the coaching roster, if you will, in terms of the recruiting process. How instrumental were they in kind of not only holding the class together, but adding guys on?
Well, I think anybody that knows who those guys are, and probably, Matt certainly had recruited or maybe knew of or had been involved with some of those guys, either where he was currently or in the past. And Matt is just, they're both tremendous guys, but Matt has been an incredible recruiter throughout his career and has built a ton of great relationships. And I think, you know, coaches see that, high school coaches see that junior college, and they kind of go, okay, wow, you know, that guy's going there. That's, you know, just credibility. And then Ron Aiken is off the charts. You know, the greatest endorsement when I was kind of in this whole process is talking to Kirk Ferentz, and he said that you know, the thing about Ron is you'll just feel bad because he's a better person than you, he's a better coach than you, he's a better husband than you, and that, you know, that's a pretty good endorsement. And the other one was when somebody else trying to get this job said, oh, well, if you have a chance to get him, you got to hire him. And there's a guy trying to get the same job. And so those guys, I think, just again, this is a special place, and we've been able to attract a ton of talent, both on paper in terms of the signees and our coaches.
Back to the right, AJ.
Coach, do you think there might be any additions to the class of 2013 in the future?
Don't know. There's a possibility of a couple things happening, and you know, stuff happens all the time, in whether it's a early out JC guy or a guy that hasn't signed or whatever.
Back to the left here, Rob Mosley.
In terms of the different guys, Prevost was the guy coming in today. A lot of us on the outside were a little bit surprised by it. Can you go through what the process was with him? I mean, at what point did you feel pretty good about his status with you guys? Who recruited him? I mean, was he affected by the coaching change and, you know, with ads or anything like that? I see you list him as a linebacker, but he, you know, obviously played some line too.
Yeah, that was a lot of questions, Rob.
Sorry.
The Dodger shirt was enough. But, he was a guy that again, Tarani that's our kind of guy. I mean, this guy is just electric on the field and off. Great smile, great character, great questions. His uncle and his mom had one of the best home visits of all time. His uncle had a litany of questions, and it was on. And it was fun. I mean, it was awesome. And they cared a ton for that kid. He had a bunch of people in one corner and a bunch of people in another corner, and I think he really saw himself here and ended up making. You know, obviously we're very happy with his decision, but he didn't make that until today, and it was one of those things. Don Pelham would definitely be considered the lead recruiter. That was a team effort. We had, you know, an incredible home visit with everybody contributing at some point. And another time when I can only go one time, so I think we had 6 guys going the next time, and just try to again, you know, show the solidarity, show the future, show the vision, all the stuff that we do, and we were just honest with the guy. You know, showed him his roadmap, and we're very happy that he's chosen to take it.
Mark to your right, Jerry Thompson.
Yes, you mentioned the wow coming out of the visits, and I think a lot of that you implied was character. But was there anybody that, you know, there's so much recruiting, or no, there's no sleepers anymore, so I guess I'm assuming, but there's somebody that you walked out and say, wow, why we got to steal? I mean, the one or two that you kind of thought that, why weren't more people after this guy? We really got some that the other schools really weren't evaluating as high as we were.
Wow, that's a great question. I don't know. I'm not going to be able to give you a very good answer.
I was glad you said it was a great question.
It's your first. No. Elijah George was a little under-recruited, but there were, you know, several people recruiting him. Jake Pisarczyk was a guy that just grew a ton. He was playing a bunch of different positions and then grew up, and so he wasn't as heavily recruited, but ended up being hammered here at the end. So very poor answer. Much better question than answer.
Back to the left, Sean Shoppy.
Out of the list, I know it's a competition and you don't know anything for sure at this point. But when you look at the list, are there guys, obviously fans are sort of looking at it from the perspective of who of this group might actually see playing time this year? Are there a few guys that have a better chance of that happening this year?
Well, obviously, positionally, we have a need at linebacker, and we have a bunch of guys that are recovering from various levels of medical issues here this winter and spring at linebacker, and we lost 3 guys that made a ton of tackles, you know, with Kiko, Michael, and Dion. And so those guys would have maybe there's less ticks on the depth chart to make, but we recruit guys to play. We don't recruit guys. We don't recruit guys as insurance policies. We don't recruit guys to fill a need if somebody gets hurt. And hopefully this happens and this happens, he might get in there. We recruit guys that hopefully are mature enough and good enough to come in and play. And we want them to be thinking that, because right now if they have the mindset of I'm coming in redshirt and they're not going to have a very productive winter, they're not going to have a very productive spring, they're not going to have a very productive summer, and then they end up, those guys end up disappointed, maybe injured because of something like that. But I don't anticipate that being an issue with too many of these guys. There's a lot of these guys that are prideful guys, and they'll show up ready to go.
Back to the right, Jake Zimmerman.
You mentioned Thomas Tyner. Everybody knows about him and how much excitement there is over him. Can you talk about your relationship with him and the process of recruiting him over the past few years, and then what, moving forward, what makes you confident that he can live up to the hype and the high expectations that everyone in this state, that all the Oregon fans have for him?
Well, that's certainly the million-dollar question. The latter part of that is how does any guy deal with that kind of stuff, and we try to help him through that and kind of bring him back to reality a little bit during this whole thing. That's the thing about recruiting now, is so much of it is these guys are told their freshman and their sophomore year that they're the greatest thing ever in the history of the world by 12,000 people, and then all of a sudden they're ninth on the depth chart somewhere. That guy takes that a lot of different ways, and Thomas is a great kid to talk to. He's been involved at a lot of high levels, whether it's been track and field or football, just in terms of competition, and that's why we like those kind of guys. They compete. There's a lot of guys that they're one sport athletes, or there's so much specialization going on. We prefer guys to do a lot of things. Those guys, they experience one where they come back in a double overtime basketball game and win against your rival. That's invaluable. Instead of just hanging out and lifting by yourself, or competing in track and field, whatever it is. There's so many of those life lessons that go into the whole person deal that matter. And then we'll just have to play it by ear of how to handle. Hopefully it's success. If it's not exactly what he dreamed of, we can deal with that too.
Back to the left, Gary Horowitz.
Mark, when you talk to these players, how often does it come up where they say, well, I want to go to Oregon because of the style of play on both sides of the ball?
I think that comes up a lot. I think, it's my fault, probably. Sorry about that. Comes out of Dave's budget right there. But I think that's a huge thing, just in terms of getting our foot in the door with guys, and then we just have to gauge legitimately how much interest does a kid have to come across the country. You look at a guy like Joanne Williams or Pisarcik; those guys are coming a long way, and part of that is just the Oregon brand. Part of that is the university. Part of that's some combination of a bunch of other factors.
Back to the right, Jerry Thompson.
Simple question. Any high schoolers in the spring, do you think, will be coming in?
Maybe. There's a couple guys talking about it, but nothing for sure.
Any more questions? Rob Mosley.
You did have a photo make the rounds over the weekend of a couple of recruits and a current player in a relatively compromising position. Your reaction when you saw that? Were there any repercussions for anyone in the photo?
Yes. The reaction was obviously, highly concerned, and we've already discussed that with the entire team as well as the individuals involved. I think that the biggest crime in terms of that situation was stupidity, and we used it as a teachable moment. We talked to the team last night about everything about that, whether it's college life or social media, dealing with situations like that. And we had a very emotional meeting last night, and trying to learn from a very unfortunate situation, which again I'd like to. We talked about it last night, and pass our condolences along to the Arizona State football family for losing a member of their family, Tyrese Thompson, who passed away last week, and talked about that just in regard to that whole situation, and I think we used it as a very good learning experience.
To the right, Darren Fentress.
Obviously, you took over as head coach. You took over a class that Chip was recruiting of. Do do you have any different philosophies from Chip that might reshape how you guys approach recruiting in the future? And were there kids,
right.
I guess you can't answer this last question, but were there kids that maybe you wouldn't have targeted that he targeted, and kids that you targeted that maybe he didn't target?
I don't think necessarily that much this year. I don't think there was that. Oh,
No, go ahead. No,
oh.
I'm not getting up the mic yet.
Yeah. I don't think philosophically we're that far off. I think we're going to make just a couple, which we do every year in some form or fashion, just some programmatic things that we think we can improve upon. Whether it's how we pass the film along. If you like a guy and somebody else likes a guy, and how that all gets evaluated, or how we share the information, offense to defense, defense to offense. You take a guy like Johnny Munt or Robinson. There's a lot of people that like a piece of those guys as an athlete, and just to just cross-check those guys a little bit more of, hey, this guy wants to play offense, this guy wants to play defense, this guy, maybe it's a big outside linebacker that might be a offensive tackle someday. All those communication things, but I don't think philosophically there's that much difference in terms of we want great kids, we want championship people and championship football players.
Back of the room to the left, Alex.
Just as an Oregon guy and being able to keep two of the top Oregon players in the state, obviously, you don't want to leave the state undone, but how big was that for you, and obviously to go ahead forward in that regard?
We don't care if they're from Guam or wherever. If they can play, we want them. And obviously, if it's a guy in state that we want, that fits our makeup, that fits our needs, so to speak, we want those guys. And it just so happened this year that there's several of those guys that fit that bill.
To the right.
Coach, Al Davis drafted Gene Upshaw and Art Shell to stop Curly Colvin, Buck Buchanan. Do you see bigger offensive linemen like Hunt, George, and other linemen to stop dominant defensive line?
Wow. Curly Culp reference. Yes, is the short answer. We like guys like the makeup of our guys that we signed this year. They're medium to large. Guys that are. You take a guy like Elijah George, who's probably again 6'5", 250-ish, 255-ish, kind of along the lines of Tyler Johnstone or Jake Fisher. The same with Cameron Hunt. The same with a couple of these other guys that you can build up. It's always easier to build onto a frame than a 385-pound, college or high school junior that you're always fighting that for 4 years, and then you end up with a decent player at some point. Guys like these, they come in, they're athletic, they're the frame is such that you can build onto them. That's usually a better product. Hopefully Al Davis would agree.
To the left, Sean.
With Tyner on board, when you look at your collection of running backs, what's your instinct as far as how you feel like you're going to use them?
We'll see how that goes. That's again one of those questions that will remain unsolved game by game, even of whether Byron, DeAnthony, the guys that we signed today, Kanai and Thomas, the combination of guys on campus, and then the combination of Braylon Addison, Josh Huff, Darrell Hawkins, moving those guys around. The other receivers that we signed today are very versatile guys that can do a little bit of everything. We like those guys.
Stay on the left-hand side of the room, Rob.
You have a lot of guys that return kicks in high school. I mean, are there guys best suited at the college level to return kicks in this class?
We'll see. That is a good question too. A lot of times those guys in high school, the guys coming down aren't quite as fast, aren't quite as big, and it's a little bit more comfortable back there. And sometimes it takes guys to grow into that role in college. Braylon did a great job. You look at the bowl game of standing there and taking some shots. That's a tough deal. That's a very tough deal to stand in there with, Indy cars running by you, and you're supposed to catch a punt, or whatever, stay in bounds or whatever it is. But there's a lot of those guys that fit that bill, and we're excited to find out who's going to just end up in which hole.
Jake Zivin on the right.
There have been a few high-profile field goals missed in the past couple of years.
Thanks for bringing it up.
Sorry. A lot of fans will probably be paying more attention to Matt Wogan than normally a kicker would get in a class because of that. What can you tell us about him, and what gives you confidence that he can be a guy that can make those 40-yarders down the road?
We sure hope so. I mean, he's a guy in film. I mean, he's done it, you know, and in our camp, he came to our camp, and he's a touchback machine, which is, the defense loves that, fans love that, I love that, that's great, you know, great stuff, and just a very productive, very efficient kicker. And then you just have to do it, you know, you have to do it with the lights on and the noise and the situation, and just trust your training and do it. But his makeup is solid as a rock as far as, you know, coming into this situation. You couldn't have a better, just a guy, you know. He's an athlete who's a kicker, you know, and those guys are usually your guys that can handle those kinds of situations.
Expecting to compete as a true freshman?
I'm sorry?
Expecting to compete as a true freshman?
Definitely. Yeah, we expect all these guys to compete as true freshmen.
The left there, Adam Jude.
Just last week became official with Scott Frost getting the promotion. Can you talk about your relationship with Scott and how you see kind of roles forming going forward?
Yeah, my relationship with Scott is excellent. Very close. You know, he's a great guy. Great guy to have around. Very diverse background. Again, he's played on offense. He's played on defense. Coached for great defensive, or played for, you know, great offensive coaches. Played for great defensive coaches. Worked with both. And so his background is such that he can talk to people in a lot of different ways. And that's a big deal of when you're trying to attack a defense, just like anything else. If you know what they're trying to do and you know how they do it, you can hopefully have some counterpunch. And you know, as far as the roles going forward, we'll figure all that out. All that is in time, and we'll be fine.
Any more questions? Take that as a
Thanks,
no.
guys.